Thanks for coming along to Woodworking Masterclass. My name's Steve, welcome to my workshop. What we're doing this season is we're making a Cabriole leg table with dovetail drawers, and so far it's coming together quite well. We've got the top made, we've got the carcass made, last week we did the drawer, and now we're moving on to the Cabriole legs. So all of you that sent me emails saying, when are you going to do Cabriole legs? Well, today's the day. So I hope you enjoy the process, and if you're like me, once you learn how to do it, it's one of those things that are addictive. You're just looking for any excuse to make one. If you can remember the first series, or the first episode, I drew up the table that I wanted to build on full size on a bit of MDF. Now this is how I start to make the Cabriole leg. So that's another good reason to draw up something in large format, in size if you like, because then you can take your measurements off. Oh, and also somebody sent me an email the other day saying, why don't you give us any measurements? Well, frankly, they're not relevant, because this table was made to sit next to my lounge for me to put remotes in, and my lounge is that high off the ground. So I just got a piece of timber, marked how high I wanted it, and from there on the measurements actually take care of themselves. So instead of fluffing about, worrying about being half a mil out here or there, you're not. You're building a whole organic piece, and it's a lovely way to work. Okay, piece of tracing paper, stole this out of the kitchen, some masking tape, which the kids stole from me, and we'll just put this on here. Whoops, some glasses. And all I do is trace a drawing of that leg. Now be as precise as you can, because it does help to keep in profile with the piece. Okay, now where's the ruler? Here we go. Just mark this off across here. There I have a copy of the Cabriole leg. I then transfer that onto a piece of MDF. I tell you what, I think my dog's pinched me a bit of MDF. Oh no, there it is. Lying down on the floor. Overfed and overpaid and underworked. Then I glue that on, and just use a bit of Aquid here or whatever glue you use so it's stuck on, and then I'll cut that out on the bandsaw and shape it using a spoke shave and a sanding block until I end up with this shape. Now that is the template you're going to use to mark your legs out with and cut your legs. The wing's the same, and if you look, or ear, I've heard them called both, if you look at this, there's a slight bit of outage. You see right down there, it's poking down below the leg. Now I did that on purpose, and I did it for a reason. So later on in part 2, because this is quite involved, it's in part 1 and part 2. Part 1 we'll cut the leg out, we'll start shaping it, and then in part 2 we'll fit these ears and marry the whole leg together. And that I'll explain next week. All right, now get a piece of timber that is required. In this case it's a piece of 3x3. I always cut it about 100 mil longer than I actually need, because then I can cut 100 mil off and that'll give me the ears. So I've got the one bit of timber in the one leg, and sometimes that is important for timber movement, and also depending if you're going to leave it plain or if you're going to stain it. If you're going to leave it a natural colour, you get a coordination of all the colour going through. All right, so what I do is, or before we go anywhere, make sure that this timber is absolutely square on all faces. All faces here, and more importantly, on the top from every face. Because if you don't start with it square, it gives you a lot of trouble later on. If it's a little bit out, just find if there's a high spot, pop it in the vise, grab a block plane with a very closed mouth, and just even it only a fraction of the time until you get it dead square. The other thing is, if you've got a fantastic docking saw or a table saw that's square, you might not have those issues. Okay, now lay the leg out So the flat part at the top is dead flat with the top, and on the side is dead flat. Make sure you've got enough meat here, and then all you do is draw around and around that side, and then flip it 90 degrees, turn that over, and repeat the process. If you've got a manky bit of timber here, don't worry about it, because that's going to be waste, and we'll get rid of that. So once it's drawn on, what you end up with is this. I'm not sure if that'll show up, but you'll see the leg coming here and here, and we go over to the bandsaw and we'll cut this leg out. Now we don't need the fence for this, so move it right out of the way. When you start up, very gradually ease the blade into the leg, but make sure it's on the outside of the line. We want to cut up to the line, but not through the line. That way we can plane it to shape with spoke shaves later on. But do it very, very slowly and very calmly. Don't force the blade, because you're generally using a thin blade. I think I'm using a 3/8, might be 4 or 5 TPI. And just let the wood almost guide itself. Take your time. It's no hurry. It's much easier to spend some time here being slow rather than rush it and then have to do the leg again. Now I'm taking it right up to the toe, but I'm not actually removing that section. So you bring it up as far as you can, and then very, very carefully slide the blade back out. You can turn the machine off to do it, but I find it's easier if the blade's spinning, but you've got to be very, very careful and gentle. Now come back onto the inside. Start again slowly and work your way up the outside of the line. But as you'll see when I come to the end of this, I don't remove this piece of waste totally. I come up as close as I possibly can and then reverse the blade out again. Now the other side, move up as far as you can between the line and the outside of the block, turn it around. It's important at this stage, when that blade cuts in, that it is lined up with the previous cut that you did. That'll give you a nice square edge. Okay, now as you can see, all the pieces are still attached, but only by the smallest fibres. Flip it over 90 degrees. Now when we come in, we're following that other pencil line, and again sticking to the outside, but in doing this we remove all the waste. The reason we leave those other bits on with just little fibres attaching is so we've got a flat base to cut the entire leg out. The other process, you can remove all the material and then replace them with masking tape, but that becomes very messy. So if you can discipline yourself to cut it this way, see how that just comes away nice and easily, and we're still working on a flat platform, but we're getting one profile of the leg. Just coming up to the last bit now. Make sure those cuts are nice and square, so when you line your wings up later on, or the ears of the cabriole leg, it flows properly. The last bit of waste is just about to come off. Now if you can look how easy it is to remove the rest of the waste, be careful with this one, and there you go. That's the leg ready to go. But before you throw this waste away, just cut the top end off here, and we use that later on, and I'll show you how to use that. Yeah, welcome back. Okay, so just before the break, we cut out a cabriole leg. At the moment it doesn't really look much, but by the time we finish shaping it, it'll look beautiful. And this is live TV. In fact, I didn't realise that that had a blemish going through it, but unfortunately it does, and we don't have the budget to cut another one. But it is going to come out okay. So what I use is, you can use a carver's clamp if you like, or I just use a big old F clamp. Pop it in the vise, nice and secure. Pop your leg in there. That's how we start carving it. But before we get that far, what we have to do is just make a few pencil lines. So I'll take that out for a sec. Put the leg in, and so we get a nice round toe, we have to actually draw a circle. You've got a square bit in there at the moment, so just get your ruler and draw a couple of diagonals in. Then get a pencil compass. What we want to do is draw a circle that doesn't go over the edges, but is nice and round. Now, if you've cut some of these and they're slightly different sizes, draw the circle to the smallest one. That way they'll match. This one's just coming in there. Okay. And then what we have to do is round that off. The other thing we do is get an HB pencil or a 2B pencil, something that's nice and dark, and then scribe a line down the centre of each face over to the toe. And what we're going to use that for is a height line, and that means that's going to define the thickness of our leg when we've actually shaped it round. The idea is to keep this there at all times. So with this circle, you can see we're just touching the edge there. So that means they're the high points, there, 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 and there. And we've actually pulled those lines up. So providing we keep these lines intact, and then all we have to do is shape a radius from that line to that line, that line to that line, and so on, and we'll end up with a nice round leg. So we'll go back to the F clamp, pop it in, make sure it's nice and tight. There's another thing to be a little bit wary of. I've been doing these for about 30 years and I've had a few explode. Be careful with the tension you put on there, because if you put too much tension, this will let go in the middle. So always wear safety glasses. The other thing, people put sandpaper or cork blocks here to stop it from swinging. When I'm making a leg, I like to be able to turn the leg. And what we're going to start off shaping it with is spoke shaves. Now, these are the common variety spoke shaves. There's a rounded one and a flat one. This happens to be a Record, this is a Stanley, and they're terrific. They do a great job. I've just gone on to these. These are Australian made, they're HNT Gordon. I like them because they've got a much smaller mouth and I've got big hands, so they work well in my hands. But it doesn't matter which one you use. The number one thing is make sure you get it sharp. Okay, now we've got a flat spot here. The first job is to roll over on the flat spot. And you're going, whenever you're going downhill, that's the way you've got to plane. If you come back this way, you can get a bit of tear out. The beautiful thing with a spoke shave, I'll tell you what else I use, a little bit of candle. Just a little bit of wax on there and it works wonders. I don't know if you can hear that, but if you can see my dog down there, he's doing some woodwork of his own. I hope it's not expensive. Okay, now I've taken that off. I've got to replace that line. The thing with making these is your eye will tell you what you're doing, but rely on your touch, because the touch will let you know where the high spots are, where it needs a bit more, where you've gone too far, and start to trust what you're feeling. Whoops, go around this way. It's not my intention at this point to completely shape the leg. I just want to get rid of flat spots. I can feel a little ridge there. That's gone. Okay, and just renew my pencil mark. Now let's just have a look. Got no more flat spots. Okay, now what I'll start to do is working on rounding the toe. I was somewhere recently doing a demonstration and I might just get a bigger chisel. I was chiseling it like this and the person said, "Is that the way you do it at home?" I said, "Certainly, why wouldn't it be?" "Oh," he said, "I'd do it on a sander." No, I've got more control with a chisel than a sander, because once it's been sanded, you can't get it back. But a chisel, If you take too much off with a chisel, you can keep that piece and glue it back on and keep working. But once it's sawdust, I'm sorry, that's it. So what you've got to do here is just knock the corners off so we come down to that circle. You can be a bit aggressive when you start, but as you get closer, just be a little more gentle. Got to watch it too, sometimes the grain will turn on you. I was doing another demonstration one time and you know, the showmanship comes out in you, and I thought, oh no, I'll just show people how to do this, and I went whack like that and the whole toe flew off. Felt about that big. Okay, you have a look at that. I'm starting to get that circle happening. So now I'll attack it with a bit of a spoke shave. If you plan on making 4, get enough material to cut out 6. Because if you only get enough for 4, guaranteed something will go wrong. Okay, now flat spoke shave again. I can start to round my toe over. And always be mindful that you're working to that line. See how I just moved that then? Now, this is fairly boring spectator sport, but nonetheless it's important that you see how it's done. So I'll keep on whittling away at this while we go to a break, and then when we come back I'll show you how you can start to get shape in your leg, not only using spoke shaves but using a rasp as well. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you the other side of the break, and I'll keep working. Well, welcome back. I've been busy in the break. I've started to flatten it out and round the back, and if you have a look on the toe, you can see it's almost to the circle now. That's what we're looking for. Okay, now we'll start to put a bit of shape into the legs, and the way we do that is much the same, more spoke shaving, but you might have to use a different spoke shave here. And we'll just get that in there nice. And remember what I said about don't over tighten the clamp, because if it lets go, it'll frighten you. So where it's nice and straight. The good thing about a spoke shave is it'll cut both directions. It'll cut going like this, or it'll cut in a pull stroke. Okay, so on these straight bits, that's fine. And what I'm doing is getting that radius between these two lines. So I just want to have a nice smooth curve. Okay, now because I'm actually planing in a curve there, I don't know if you can see that, but my plane's going there, and this is a flat base blade or bottom spoke shave, and so I'm not getting as much cut as I could. That's when you go over to a rounded one. If you have a look at this Stanley, it's quite an aggressive round. On the HNT, it's not quite as aggressive, but you can go in and scoop when you're doing curves. And now we'll really start to move material. See how much more material is coming up with that as opposed to a flat one. So it's just working between the two to get the right radius you want. Now I'm not going to totally shape this leg because we've got to fit the wings on it soon, but I will get it to a certain stage, and there is no proper way of doing it or sequence to doing it, but I tend to do the two sides first, then the front, and then the back, because I think the back's the easiest, and I like easy bits, but if you do the easy one first, then you won't want to do the hard ones. Okay. I'm sorry for the monotony. I know it's like watching grass grow, but it's good to see something come to life too. Okay. Now if I get my hand, I can start to feel it's getting a nice radius to it. And I might have, I'm just losing sight of that line. No, I haven't planed through it, but the sweat from my hand is actually making it disappear. So this, an HB or a 2B pencil is fine. You don't want a 2H or something like that because it's just too hard. And you don't get the colour. For these really tight spots, there's a new thing out called I was called a little spoke shave, but I think they call it a cigar spoke shave or something. And it's fantastic for getting right in tight little corners. You can just move away that otherwise you'd have to use something else. Okay, now we've done the two sides, let's do the front. Round over one again. Tell you what, they got me under the pump. I like doing this at my leisure, but I've got a time counter in front of me, so it feels like the Olympic trials. Okay, here we go. All right, you can start to see that starting to take shape. A little high up here still. And shock, horror and disgust, there's a check appeared in the front, but I don't think it's lethal. That's what they make glue and putty for anyway. Okay, now we can just straight shave wherever it is on this. Normally leave these alone, leave right up the top of the knee alone, because we'll straighten that out once we put the ears on. But from the knee down to the leg, just take the tooth marks out that the saw's left, and you want this part here to remain sharp. So you've got a nice sharp defined line coming down from the knee that blends nicely into the leg. And you can really see that grain starting to pop, which is beautiful. Go to a round over when we're in the curve. See how it just removes it? Now we're going to put that line back in. Okay, so we're starting to get a bit of shape there. Now, if you really want to roll it over, I've done a lot there with the with the spoke shaves. Use a rasp. Now this one's a cabinet maker's rasp, and it's fairly good for getting nice chunky curls off, if you can see that. Just move this behind me. Oh, getting a bit of a pickle here. There we go. And it leaves big marks. I don't know if you can get a close-up of those big gouges it's making. But anyway, that's not bad for roughing. This is one I found recently. A friend of mine's a luthier, and he is, and it's a rasp. It's beautiful. Very light touch, and you can get a lot of shape. It really cuts, but it's not as aggressive as that first one I was using. And it's bowed on one side. Spin it around. The thing with trick it with these is just, I might use that little cigar shaver in here, don't be afraid of having a go. And if it breaks, so what? You're learning. We're not going to get it perfect first time every time. Bring that in a little bit. There we go. It's cooking with gas now. I mean, woodwork's all about the experience and what you learn along the way, not the finished product. And the biggest thing I learned was how to control my temper. Okay. All right, now that's starting to get nice and round. The other thing you can use is what they call a bow sander. And I've never seen these made, commercially available, but if you go to www.mastercraft, what is it? Woodworking Masterclass, that's it. I've got plans on there, and they're terrific because you can really get some shape in. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll finish shaping this, and then next week we'll start fitting the ears, and we can get this leg finished. Not long to go, so Steve once more pulling the shed door down, saying remember to keep it sharp, but more importantly, keep it safe.
Seasons 1 and 2 of Woodworking Masterclass are now available on DVD. Call 31 Digital on 07 30 10 7331 or head over to the Woodworking Masterclass Facebook page to order. Grab a copy of Woodworking Masterclass on DVD and remember to keep it sharp, but more importantly, keep it safe and enjoy your woodwork.
G'day, I'm Steve, and I look forward to welcoming you into my workshop for episode 5 of Woodworking Masterclass. It's part 2 of making these magnificent Cabriole legs. We'll be joining on the ears, and I'll show you how to marry it all together and get nice, sleek, flowing lines. So until then, I look forward to your company on Woodworking Masterclass.